Hi everyone, I am back with my April design team project for the Graphics Fairy. And you will see that this is a little bit of a departure for me. I was going through my fabrics as I was deciding what I wanted to do for this project this month. And I had decided I wanted to do something using some fabrics, and I ran across this retro kind of kitchen inspired fabric that I had. And so as I was looking through the Graphics Fairy website, I ran across some of these fabulous printables. These are the kitchenware stickers. Now, this is 100%. As with all of the Graphics Fairy images, you can resize these. So you could do this as a half page, you could make it as a quarter page, and you could use these as literally as stickers. If you have a Xyron, you can make them into stickers throughout a journal. So you'll see that I use some of the red ones. So these come in red and black, and these are from the black and white kitchenware bundle. And the other thing that I ran across were these great kitchen tags, and I've forgotten now which bundle. It could be the same bundle, but everything will be listed in the blog post. There's these great tags that you'll see throughout the journal as well. And then the other thing that I really liked are these red labels, and these are from the junk journaling bundle, and you can see here I've used a few of them throughout this journal at the bottom, but these are some of these great labels. If you're looking for vintage Denison labels and can't find any, these are great to use in lieu of actual vintage. So I have added some of those to this journal as well. So let me show you what I've created here. So this is a mix of vintage. So I have a huge collection of vintage kitchen and cooking ephemera that I've used along with the printables rather from the Graphics Fairy. So it's been a long time since I've done a charm on a journal, but this is what I came up with for this one. I've just added a little bit of gingham ribbon here and a vintage milk bottle cap. This is a vintage sale price ticket here. And then this is just these two tags in the middle are just made to look vintage. So I've added some of the same gingham ribbon for the closure here, and I've just added a couple of eyelets. So on the inside I have used some vintage cookbook paper, and this is the index to one of them, and I have just added a vintage milk cap here, and then I've just folded it over here to create a pocket. And this is a vintage receipt with another bottle cap and a bit of trim. And here you will see that I have added one of the Graphics Fairy recipe cards that are in the bundles as well. I believe it's the kitchenware bundle as well. And then this is a vintage recipe card here. And then I've just added throughout some of my vintage ephemera, a couple of images that I had just kind of on my desk, sale price tag, a restaurant order form, and then this is a green stamps booklet. There's no green stamps in it, but I thought it was just an interesting piece of ephemera. And then just a vintage perishable tag there. I've added a couple of these paper clips. So these are just resin flowers, and I have just adhered them with some E6000 glue to a paper clip, and then I've just added a little bit of felt to the back. And they just add a little bit of interest to the top of the journal. Here is one of the printables from the Graphics Fairy. You'll see this is in the red, of course. And then I've used my Dymo labeler to add a little shopping list there. This is a vintage piece, and then I have added a couple of printables. There's one of those tags, and then the other thing that's part of that kit, I believe it's the kitchenwares bundle, is the seed envelopes. So this is tomato, and you'll see another one further on. Another vintage piece. In the middle here I have attached a vintage cookbook page to some lined paper, added a little bit of trim. On this side, this is it was from a vintage ad, and then I've just adhered it to some coffee dyed paper on the back just for a little bit of interest and to add some notes. And then on this side, these are tags, printables from the Graphics Fairy. And then this is a vintage recipe for strawberry jellied salad. I thought that sounded pretty 1950s, actually, those jellied salads. And moving on, another vintage piece here I've added to the back of that vintage recipe. This is a little bit of a quilt square that I had. I've added a bit of trim here. And then for this booklet, I have cut up a vintage tomato seed packet. And then I've just added a little bit of paper here, a vintage recipe, and this is a little pocket, raspberry preserves, and I've just clipped in a little cheese label, and then a please pay cashier. That is a little booklet that I thought would be good for adding a few recipes to. And my thought with this journal is that, yes, it could be certainly used for recipes, but it could also be, you know, a food journal, or just a general journal for someone who really likes cooking or baking. Another of the resin flower paper clips that I made. And on this side, you'll see one of the labels from that Red Labels collage sheet. And these labels come in blue as well. This is a vintage playing card, the Hot Point Electric Kitchen. And then I had this vintage photograph of these ladies sitting down to eat. So I thought that that was a great image to add. And then another vintage recipe card there. And then on this side, this is the other half of the index that I've made into a pocket here. And I've just added a couple of vintage recipe cards there. So this journal is 2 signatures. Another vintage recipe here from a recipe book, and here I have added a milk cap just as a little tab to the top, and then I have some vintage receipts here for a bakery, and that's a pastel jelly toppings recipe, vintage recipe. And then that's just a guest check there. And I've added some fabric tabs and a little food stamp there. And to this side, I have clipped another of the Graphics Fairy seed packets. This time this is for lettuce. And then I have a seed packet for beans. That is a vintage item as well. Another recipe book page here. And then on this side, I have used just an image I happen to have, my Dymo labeler, and I've added, just with these small binder rings, just a few recipe dividers. And behind each divider, I've got a vintage recipe. And the last one is actually glued just on 3 sides so that it creates this pocket. And in the pocket, again, just a little vintage tomato aspic recipe. And this is a printable from the Graphics Fairy. and then just Coca-Cola Bottling Company order form that I happen to have. And I have added, that's not going in, I'll put it in after, a little fabric tab there. And here I have painted one of the Tim Holtz clips just with this red. I thought it went well with, of course, the color of the journal. Here, another of the Graphics Fairy printable labels and a couple of vintage recipes here. I've added just a fabric ruffle here. On this side, clipped with this, was another of the Graphics Fairy printable tags, and then this fondue equipment you should have. I thought fondue was very retro. The other part of this cookbook, I've used my Dymo labeler for groceries here. This was an apple juice label that I've just attached. Here I've got a little tab, some fabric and some ribbon and a little button there, and I've just clipped this vintage coupon. I think these are the only pages I haven't done anything to. I thought I better leave some blank space, so good for recipes or journaling there. On this side I have another Graphics Fairy label. I have clipped this recipe little booklet. I think it was for pineapple, for Dole pineapple. And then this other vintage recipe, drop donuts. And then I had this, I guess this is register tape, I think, but I thought it was suitable because it talks about fruit squashes there. The other side of the recipe page, my Dymo labeler, I've added cooking and then a little bit of pom-pom trim there, some food stamps. Here I've made a pocket from a vintage recipe. I've added a tab from a price tag. I've made a little paper clip here with some fabric. I've clipped on this cheese label, and then inside the pocket I've got another vintage recipe and then just a blank vintage index card there. Move that. On this side I have this is a Monte Carlo cocktail as the tab on this side. And here I have clipped a few things. This is a vintage card, and it just talks about different measurements. This is a coupon for oven cleaner, and then this is General Foods Consumer Center recipe book collection, and so it talks about all of the recipe books that they have in their collection, and you can place an order for them. Another image from the Graphics Fairy. Here I've just attached to that vintage cookbook page. Here I have clipped another vintage recipe card, and then this is a tally card. So I thought that was kind of cute for journaling, and I liked the food images on that. I thought it went well. And here is a vintage evaporated milk label for a can. I've created a pocket with that, and then I've added a couple of the printables from the Graphics Fairy. And then this is the last page, and that is the fabric that I have used for the inside. So that is my April design team project for the Graphics Fairy. Would love it if you would check out the premium membership site. You can find all of these printables there and all kinds of other fabulous bundles. And those bundles will be linked in the blog post over at thegraphicsfairy.com, which I will link below. So thank you everyone for joining me today, and I will see you back next month with another project.